show up?
All right.
Oh, yeah, now it is. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for taking the time to meet with me, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all that you have to say about sustainability and your involvement with it at Microsoft. And I'm excited for the students to also learn from you. First, I would love to learn about what your role is at Microsoft.
Yeah, well, thank you first for contacting me about this opportunity to speak with you, and I hope your students enjoy this session. So again, I'm Jennifer Bittner. I'm an Azure Data and AI Artificial Intelligence Specialist here at Microsoft. I'm based in Southern California here in the United States. And I'm focused on working with my customers in the manufacturing space. I'm working with initiatives around working with data. But along with that, every day I hear my customers talking about their goals around sustainability. So this is definitely a topic that is of huge interest to me.
And that's perfect because today's topic is around sustainability. So day to day, is this top of your mind during your day-to-day conversations with your clients? And if so, can you please provide some input on what you're hearing from your customers?
Yes, I have every day I talk to, gosh, like anywhere from 3 to 10 customers a day. And this is a topic that comes up very often. I'm going to give you an example of one of my favorite customers, and I'll follow it up by sending you a case study so you can all read about this. But one of my favorite customers is Lindsay Manufacturing. And they manufacture big equipment for a variety of different uses. One is for water conservation. So if you've ever been to a farming area where in the fields they've got these huge long devices, they're called pivots, and they water big agricultural fields. So typically they just go out there and water the fields. They sell just a normal watering pivot. But what they're doing to help their customers is their IoT, Internet of Things. I'll talk more about that later, but they're creating IoT in the pivots so they can capture data about the watering behaviors and the result of what that's having on the crops. The ultimate goal is to try to help their customers, their farmers, use less water. So they have a huge goal around sustainability in providing sustainable solutions to their customers. That's one example at Lindsay Manufacturing for the agriculture space. Another example is for roadways, how to help traffic and cars, even decrease the number of cars out there. So another really interesting use case that they provide is they manufacture large equipment in roadways. So think about a device that's put up in a roadway that can move. So where they've put this up as an example is in San Francisco, one of the major bridges. They've put up one of these movable devices to create a pedestrian path. But why they need to move it is so if they have maintenance on the bridge, that device through IoT capabilities can be moved. They can fix the bridge and then move it back. So imagine all of these people can now ride their bikes over the bridge versus always having to drive a car. Another really good sustainability solution that Lindsay Manufacturing has brought to the industry. So sustainability and sustainability goals has really created a whole new line of products that my customers, manufacturers, can bring to a variety of industries. So I'll send you a write-up that has more information on that.
That is absolutely incredible. And thank you for sharing that example. I'll definitely send that on with to my students.
A couple more things about that. with Lindsay, I wanted to mention, so we talked about IoT there.
Yeah.
They're also using what we call Azure. Azure is the cloud, Microsoft cloud technology, cognitive services in on their big pivots, going back to the agriculture use case. They can use cameras to view the growth of crops so they know when they water the impact it's having on the crops over time. So the human eye could do that, but even better yet, being able to use cognitive services for that. And then using Azure machine learning to predict the crop, this is the amount of water, these are the crops that I have, let's predict the yields that I'm going to have from these crops. And we're always, trying to get more food produced out of our crops. So again, leaning back to sustainability goals. So sorry to interrupt you, but wanted to make sure I got those 2 extra points out around. So they're using IoT, cognitive services, along with machine learning there at Lindsay.
And those concepts are quite new, will be new terminology for our students. I don't know if you could explain a little bit further IoT, cognitive services, and the machine learning.
Definitely. I'd love to explain more because in all of the different case studies that I think about daily, we're always talking about those 3 main concepts. So let's start with the first, IoT. Again, that is the new buzzword in the technology industry here at Microsoft. IoT means collecting data off of devices we use every day. So examples of this could be, let's think about your car. Let's think about Tesla. The Tesla is a connected car, an electric car. So if I don't own a Tesla, but if I did, I could track how fast I'm going, how fast I accelerate. All of that data coming off of my driving habits of driving that Tesla can be captured. And what's interesting about capturing that information is maybe as a Tesla owner, I want to know how to extend my battery life of my car. So I can use data, again, IoT data, Internet of Things data, off of my car to learn about my driving habits and to see how I can improve battery life. So any aspect of life, we can think about anything we use that we can capture data on, that's Internet of Things, IoT. Our refrigerators, all of our home appliances, that's the trend, is to capture data off of all of those devices, make them last longer. Refrigerators, how to use less electricity, and it all goes back to, again, sustainability.
And I think that's a lot of what Microsoft Azure is also doing, is they're not just capturing the individual's data from their own device, like from a Tesla, for example, your own individual car. They're capturing the data of all Teslas and then using that to form better decision making, if I'm understanding correctly from how Azure works.
Actually, Deanna, that was a really good lead in because that's a larger data set. So the more IoT data you can collect, the larger the data set. So one car, you can make a little bit of and take a little bit out of it. But if you were now to have millions of cars, that's a much larger data set, and you can see better trending, which goes into the other concept you asked about, which is machine learning. So when we talk about machine learning, we need large data sets because you want to learn information about that data to then be able to make predictions about the future. So in the case of Lindsay Manufacturing with the crop growth, let's say I'm growing with strawberries. I'm going to want to know, how much water I'm using to grow strawberries, and what's the perfect amount of water to water them to get the best strawberry that lasts the longest with the largest yields. So I can then make predictions and then tell my farmers this is the perfect way to grow a strawberry. So the larger the data set I have, the better predictions that I'll be able to make.
Mm. And that saves not only for the company, it not only saves the cost of the water, but it also saves that natural resource for the earth. So it has two different benefits, which is really exciting.
Well, and along with that too, I want to minimize waste.
Yeah.
So with food production, there's a lot of food that does go to waste. So when I'm looking at the time it takes to get that perfect strawberry from the field to us as a consumer, I want to make sure I can get as many of those to the market as possible. And so how can I have that strawberry last longer? So what is the right mix to have a long, not only a tasty strawberry, but a long lasting strawberry?
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
And the other one I think you asked about, was it cognitive services?
Cognitive services, yes.
Let's stay along the lines of the strawberry for a moment. So another concept. So when we're talking about sustainability and technology, another concept we can bring in is cognitive services. So that's what I see, something I can speak to, I can see it, but I can use a machine to, or even to search it, but using machines to do that. Examples are, from a seeing perspective, I can use a camera. So as all of these strawberries are coming off the fields, I can see what they look like and make generalizations about the larger crop through computer vision. Another example is when I say something, it can speech to text. When you see this recording later, you're going to see our conversation, which is speech to text, as an example. There are a lot of sustainability case studies that are hinged on IoT, machine learning, and cognitive services. How can we use these Azure technology services for sustainability efforts? So in a moment, I'd love to, if it's okay with you, to share more stories that are really hinged around these concepts, but for sustainable goals.
Yes, that would be delightful. Thank you. I'd love for the students to learn more about your different clients and how these three concepts connect with sustainability. Okay. Thank you.
Let me share. I'm going to share just a few slides, and I want to do that. So you had requested maybe that I send some of these over to look at in the future.
Yes.
So I can send you a link to these once I am done sharing them. Let's see, slideshow. Okay. So there are, I believe, there's hundreds and hundreds of stories to choose from. And so it was really tough going through and picking out which ones to use. But I'll explain why I chose some of these, and there are 4 of my favorite that I found that brought back different concepts.
Great.
So the first one is, again, companies are looking for ways to bring sustainable solutions out to the marketplace. So one of these customers, one of these companies is the Bueller Group. And the business challenge that they were after is being able to address the grain production. When you produce grain, the challenge is that there's these little toxins that can be on the grain. And so 30% of all food produced is lost to waste. So that's a lot. And then coupled with the world's energy consumption is related to food production. So more than 1/3 of our energy consumption across the world is used for food production. Yet we're losing 30% of that food to waste and loss. So another statistic is a quarter of all grain is contaminated with little toxins. And toxins are what create tens of thousands of food-related illnesses per year. So a lot of statistics there, but that's the business challenge that they were up against. So they created this machine capability using both Azure IoT as well as cognitive services to be able to inspect every speck of grain that is coming in, being produced, and identifying with computers any toxins to decrease the amount of waste. So that's a big problem. And they were able to solve with that through both Azure IoT and Azure Cognitive Services.
That's something that couldn't be done just with a person's eye. Not in a short amount of time. It requires a very fast computer to be able to do something with the speed that they would need that to happen. So that's absolutely incredible.
Yes.
And do you, I don't know if you know to what extent they were able to minimize the toxins or minimize the food waste that was being produced through using these services.
That is a good question. I will send over a link to that full case study, and it may have it in there. But that is
I'm sure it would.
Follow on is to see what the resulting, and they're getting better and better at doing this. So yeah, I'm interested to learn that myself.
Yeah, I can. Microsoft has its different case studies on its website, I believe, with the different clients. It's publicly available, so I'm sure I could figure that out, find that out.
So that was one, and again, I chose that for the sustainable aspect of how can we improve the quality and the quantity and getting our food out to consumers in a safe manner. This next one is a company based in Finland. Outokumpu is the name of the organization, and they manufacture stainless steel. And they were looking at ways to reduce their carbon emissions. Now, you've probably heard of this, and it'd be fun to do more research on this, but companies are fined if they do not meet certain carbon emission standards. So first, they want to improve the environment, but secondly, if they don't, then they're going to have fines that they have to deal with. So there's many different reasons why companies are looking for improvements. Now, Outokumpu, they had people working in these factories that had been there for years and just know through the what they do every day how to operate these big machines. But they have a whole changing of these people are retiring and new people are coming in and they're trying to do things better. So they are using data and capturing IoT off of these machines to make up for the decades of experience of these people that have been working in the factory, using machines and IoT and then machine learning to improve upon what they're doing it better, but then reducing carbon emissions, saving on electricity and energy and time so that they are meeting their carbon emission goals. Right. So this initiative increased the output of this facility. So they produced more, about 10 to 15% more, but they were also more, even just as importantly, they were able to reduce waste using predictive technology. So their defects were reduced by up to 40%. So an example of a very old industry doing things the same way, but even old industries can find new ways of doing things and doing them better and improving in the environment at the same time.
This is a great example of how businesses have to comply with various stakeholders, whether it being investors, society demands, and also government initiatives and government policies that they have to comply with. And it's a very complex and very new, I think, for these companies to have to deal with all of these different elements and making sure that they're complying not only for their own goals to be more sustainable, but also for others' goals like their local governments. I think this is a great example of that. So thank you for sharing that. That's something that I'll be sharing with my students as well.
Great. Yes, you're welcome. So another way to look at how to meet sustainability goals is when companies are creating their new headquarters, how can we be more efficient in the building that we're bringing, the different aspects of the building solutions. So a company, Johnson Controls, is working with real estate developers on improving their building practices. So using data, again, using IoT, data coming, the light switches, the heating and the cooling, optimizing all of the different aspects of that building using data, again, for water, lighting, and heating in one visible place. So by using Johnson Controls and the capabilities and these modern technologies to the real estate development companies, they've been able to have huge energy savings, which results in the money they're spending per month. But again, from a sustainability perspective, the real focus here is what can we do in these buildings to save energy.
I think, sorry, I keep going back to the different theories and concepts that I'll be covering in my class, but this is a great example of circular economy and some of the concepts that they'll be learning, is particularly with architecture and with creating these big buildings and offices where different elements like biomimicry, where they create these different buildings to mimic nature and how nature functions naturally. And that creates more sustainable solutions for just the running of a building. Also, regenerative design, it's hard to say, but it's that step beyond sustainability where it's, let's not just be at zero, but let's try to extend beyond that of how can we give back to nature, and how can we not just be at a net zero, but at a net positive of giving back to the earth. And so these kinds of examples are really great for understanding how these major headquarters, these major buildings with all these people and all these systems coming in and out, how they can create a smooth running day-to-day operation where there's the opposite of waste. They're actually able to produce and completely eliminate any energy consumption. That's really exciting. So,
and it makes me think on a smaller scale, even in our homes these days, we have the ability to, from our iPhone, we don't have to have our heater on when we're not home, right? It used to be you could time it, I guess, but nowadays, even in homes, you can think about how to reduce energy usage with some of the new capabilities. So I think your point is so valid. It's getting into a mind frame of always thinking about how can I do a better job on all of these fronts.
Right. And from a business, I mean, that's from an ethical perspective, but it's also from a business perspective, because a lot of these buildings, the architecture, for example, they're made with different building elements that retain heat or retain the cool air better, that it's more cost effective as well as better for the environment. So it's two sides of the same coin, really, where the businesses are benefiting, not just for the sake of the earth, but also for their balance sheet.
It's very true. For them to stay in business, they have to always remember that.
Yeah. So
And then
Great.
the last one, increasing wind farm production. So this was an example of, again, using IoT and then a new concept, digital twins. So a digital twin is being able to take an electronic copy of something and then be able to do some kind of what if analysis. So with Azure, you can create a digital twin of this wind farm and be able to make some certain tweaks and determine how that would impact the entire farm. Um, so this company was able to use IoT and digital twins to be able to reduce their operational and maintenance costs by 15% at the same time as increasing the energy produced out of this wind farm. So again, using that IoT and being able to predict using machine learning when one of these systems were going to be going down or start having an issue and fixing it before they had an issue. So there's so many use cases that are very similar to this one. So I had to include this because of, again, all of those different concepts.
Right. That reminds me, if I go back to the architecture again, I was reading about this recently about how in architecture, you could create a digital twin and then make little adjustments to the building structure, to how they can predict the optimization of the energy that's potentially would be consumed in creating that building. So for example, there was an architecture who was an architect who was discussing, oh, wonder if we shift the building this way by 10%, how would the sun's exposure onto the building affect the energy that would potentially be consumed? And once the building's built, you can't just shift it by 10%. You can't change a building once it's there. It's set. So by creating a digital twin, they're able to make those little tweaks and optimize the process of creating the most efficient building possible. So that's a great example of digital twin. And I'm sure there's just endless options of different companies. Oh, I'm sorry.
And going along with that, and your students might have an interest in this. Microsoft's doing a lot of work with what we call either smart stadiums. So, new stadiums that are going up, and they're called smart stadiums because everywhere from the parking lots, the parking structures, to the lighting, to the billboards, I mean, everything about these stadiums are thought out, and they have digital twins being used. And Microsoft has so many partners that are bringing all of their different sustainable solutions to bring either to the stadium, or we call them smart cities. So you talked about an architecture of a building, and then you can take that same idea to stadiums and to cities, and it's endless, like you
endless
said.
possibilities. It can be escalated to whole cities. And I know that I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'm sure I can look it up for the students later. It's there's a city in Saudi Arabia that they've created that is 100% carbon neutral, zero waste. And they've been able to create this entire community where they have absolutely no waste and absolutely no carbon emissions. And that is something that can be replicated and put in all cities around the world eventually. Hopefully that's where we'll get to. But with the use of technology, you can predict, based on the different elements within that city. I mean, Saudi Arabia is very specific with its climate. And so the city was created probably with that in mind. But if you were to take it to a different country with a different climate, you'd have to make some tweaks and adjustments. But you could use IoT and the cognitive services, machine learning. You can use all these concepts to apply to all these other areas. So the possibilities are endless.
They are. So those were the for case studies, again, there are hundreds, and feel free to the customer case study site with Microsoft, and you can just search on sustainability and you will find so many more that might be of interest to you. So if there's any other questions?
At this point, all of this information has been so useful, and I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to I'm sorry for the pause here. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and to
Welcome.
My apologies. Working from home has been a challenge.
Yep, it's fun.
It's so fun. Yes, I would love to hear your input on just if any advice that you have for our students. I know that you were a business student once yourself, and these students are studying business. And so if there's any advice that you might have for the students who might be interested in entering a major corporation like you have done. And I know that you have extensive experience with other major corporations as well. So I'm sure you're a wealth of knowledge.
So, you know, I have loved working here at Microsoft. We've been taught to, it's a lifelong learning experience here. I learn something new every day, whether it's from my coworkers or from my customer, or we're always encouraged to do self-learning. And we have a huge number of resources, whether it's professional development, you know, how to speak in front of people, or whether it's learning new technology. So my advice is continue to learn, continue to ask lots of questions, and do lots of listening as well, and to hear there's so many different perspectives and ways to address one situation. And here at Microsoft, we also work in teams. We're a huge company, so we work together with large teams, and it's important to listen and learn again from your teammates the different ways to solve a business challenge. So it's fun. You're just beginning with your student. The students there are just beginning with their educations, it sounds like, but it never ends, which is a good thing. Always continue to learn.
I think that's absolutely the perfect advice. I mean, that's having a growth mindset is the concept that I always try to instill in students, is that you will always be learning, and that seems especially true with you. I know since I follow you on LinkedIn as well, I know that you're always doing more certifications and upskilling the different areas that you're working in. And so that's something very great for students to know, is that you'll always be learning and you'll always be developing new skills and honing your craft. So that's really, really great. And thank you so much for taking this time. I'll be sharing this with the students, and if they have any questions, if you don't mind, I can send you an email with some questions, and yeah, but everything you've said has been such a big impact, and it's really exciting what you're doing. The involvement that you have with all of these clients to help them achieve their sustainability goals. So that's really exciting.
It is. Well, again, feel free to reach out,
Thank you.
and happy to answer any questions from you or your students. So
thank you so much. It's perfect.
good luck there.
Thank you.